Milo, a little cat crying uncontrollably in the animal shelter, seems to be grieving in a way that no one can understand. His family, heartbroken, left him there, but they had no idea that Milo was hiding a much bigger secret than they could ever imagine. Before continuing the story, tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know how far this video has come. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so I can send you exciting stories like this every day. In a quiet part of the animal shelter, a sad cat named Milo kept crying because he missed his owner. His family, heartbroken, had left him there, not knowing how much he was suffering at night. One day, Dr. White was checking Milo and saw something strange on his collar. He looked closer to read the tag again, his eyes growing wide. "Oh my God," he said softly, quickly calling his assistant. Amanda rushed in. "What's wrong, doctor?" "White?" she asked, looking from him to Milo, still curled up in the corner. "Yeah, it's just... Are you sure the woman who brought him said his last name was Simmons?" Joseph asked. Amanda frowned. "Yeah, she said her name was Clara, and his was Henry." "Why?" Joseph hesitated. "Because that's not on the tag." Milo had been inconsolable since arriving at the shelter. Clara Simmons, the widow of his late owner, had brought him in, saying he only ever listened to Henry. The family struggled to care for him and had no choice but to leave him. "If we can, we will come back to get him," Clara had said, dabbing away tears. Joseph placed Milo in a kennel, watching as the cat curled up against the wall, still crying softly. Though grief in animals wasn't uncommon, Milo's sorrow was deeper than anything Joseph had seen before. "I'm going to see Milo," Joseph told Amanda later, still thinking about the strange feeling he had. He found Milo in his kennel, covering his face with his paws. As Joseph knelt down, he saw the collar still around Milo's neck. "It's time to take that off," he said softly, reaching out. But Milo suddenly screeched, jumping away and hissing. Joseph froze, hands in the air, startled by the reaction. "Why won't you let me take off your collar?" he wondered aloud. He had caught a glimpse of the tag and felt a wave of confusion. "I must have seen it wrong," he told himself, but something felt off. Joseph inched closer, voice soft. "Hey, Milo, it's okay," he whispered, extending a hand carefully. Milo's eyes narrowed, and with a swift hiss, he swiped at Joseph, claws barely missing. Realizing force wouldn't work, Joseph backed away. Frustrated but determined, Joseph left the kennel, considering a new approach. Milo wasn't just grieving, he was guarding something. A few minutes later, Joseph returned with a treat and a toy. "Let's try this again, buddy," he said gently, placing the treat near the entrance before stepping back. Milo hesitated, watching Joseph, but eventually inched forward, sniffing before taking the treat. Joseph remained still, a small smile forming. This was a step forward. As Milo chewed, Joseph spoke gently, telling stories about his own pets. Little by little, Milo relaxed, his body less tense. Joseph tried again, this time with more determination. Milo was still cautious, but their connection was getting stronger. Using another treat, Joseph encouraged Milo to lift his head just enough to reveal the tag. His heart skipped a beat. "Oh my God," he whispered. The name engraved on the metal wasn't what he expected. It was a revelation that changed everything. "Amanda, could you come here, please?" he called, urgency in his voice. She rushed in, sensing the tension. "What's wrong?" she asked, her eyes darting between Joseph and Milo. Joseph pointed at the collar. Whatever was written there was about to turn everything upside down. Joseph was trying to put together a mystery that only seemed to grow more complicated. Every new piece of information raised more questions than answers. "Amanda, do you know Clara's full name? And are we sure their last name was Simmons?" His questions came quickly, his mind racing through possibilities. Amanda looked surprised, confusion written all over her face. "I'll have to check the paperwork. Why?" "What's wrong?" she asked, sensing Joseph's urgency. "That name isn't on the tag," Joseph replied, his voice a mix of doubt and concern. Amanda's eyebrows raised in surprise. "Not on the tag? Then who?" She paused, suddenly understanding what it could mean. "I'll check right now," she said, quickly turning to leave. Joseph refocused on the tag, trying to make out the name etched into the worn metal. It was like trying to read something scratched into an old-school desk, faint and nearly impossible to decipher. Milo's constant shifting for treats wasn't helping either, making it even harder to get a clear view. Frustration was setting in. It felt as though the collar held the key to everything, yet it refused to reveal its secret. Amanda returned, holding a folder. Yes, they're definitely Simmonses. Clara Elizabeth Simmons Mason and Frances Antonia Simmons, she confirmed. Joseph's mind reeled. If that was true, then why didn't the name on the tag match? It was like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Nothing made sense. He looked at Milo, who was curled up protectively around his collar, as if it were his most prized possession. It was clear that taking it away would only distress him further. Joseph sighed and decided to leave it alone, closing Milo's cage carefully. But his mind wasn't ready to drop the matter. He needed answers. Back at his desk, he took out Milo's records and began looking through them. Every past visit to the clinic, every little note, each detail was a clue bringing him closer to the truth. One thing stood out. Milo had been a patient for 6 years, but he was clearly older than that. He had to be at least 10. Where had he been before? Who had cared for him? And why was his name scratched out on the tag? The next logical step was to visit the Simmons address. Maybe they had the missing piece of the puzzle. Before heading out, Joseph stopped to inform Amanda and Lily. "I'm stepping out for a bit," he told them. "Call me if anything comes up." They nodded, used to his sudden investigative urges. Settling into his car, he punched Clara's address into the GPS. The caller's mystery nagged at him, refusing to leave his thoughts. As the car hummed to life, his mind filled with theories. What if Milo had been part of something bigger? What if the name on the collar had been erased for a reason? Sorry for the interruption. Before we continue with the story, I kindly ask you to like the video and subscribe to this channel. It is very important for us. Thank you very much. He pressed the accelerator, his curiosity pushing him forward. When he finally reached the Simmons mansion, the enormous house towered before him, its silence almost unsettling. Joseph parked the car and got out, his heart beating a little faster as he walked toward the heavy front door. He knocked firmly and waited. After a moment, the door creaked open, revealing a woman, someone clearly not Clara. "Hi, I'm here about Milo, Clara's cat. I really need to talk to her," Joseph said, hoping she wouldn't find his request too strange. The woman gave him a curious look before responding. "Oh, Mom's not here right now," she said, then added, "But maybe I can help." Joseph hesitated for a moment. He hadn't expected this, but decided to take the chance. "Would you mind if I looked at some old family photo albums, maybe from around 6 years ago? I'm looking for something about Milo." Rachel blinked at the request, but didn't seem too bothered. "Sure, that's a bit unusual, but let's see what we can find," she said, stepping aside to let him in. As Rachel disappeared upstairs to find the albums, Joseph stood in the grand entryway, taking in the house's opulent details. Everything about this place spoke of history and wealth, but to Joseph it also seemed to whisper secrets. His eyes drifted to an oil painting on the wall, a formal portrait of Henry Simmons. There was something about the way he was painted, almost as if his eyes were following him. Then another photo drew Joseph's attention. It was Clara and Henry smiling warmly, with Milo sitting between them. The cat looked utterly content in their embrace, and there, around his neck, was the very same collar. Joseph leaned in, narrowing his eyes. The letters on the tag were clearer in the photograph than they had been in real life. He tried to make them out. His pulse quickened. The letters didn't match Clara or Henry. The realization sent a fresh wave of confusion through him. Who had Milo really belonged to? Before he could process it fully, Rachel's footsteps echoed down the stairs, breaking the silence. Rachel clutched a book tightly, turning to Joseph with a mix of curiosity and anticipation. "Why are you so interested in that picture?" she asked. Joseph hesitated, debating how much he should reveal. He considered making something up, but decided to be honest instead. "I'm really caught up in Milo's story, especially after Henry passed," he admitted. Rachel's expression softened, a flicker of sadness crossing her face. "My dad found Milo after he was hit by a car. He was so scared. It took a long time to calm him down," she said, her voice filled with nostalgia. Joseph listened closely. Why didn't Henry take him to a vet? Oh, he tried, but Milo panicked every time he got near a car. He'd just run off and hide. It was easier to care for him at home. Rachel then added, "He's been with us for 6 years now." Joseph froze. 6 years? That didn't fit with what he had assumed about Milo's past. As they flipped through the album, he noticed Milo's collar in one of the older photos. Something about it stood out. "Has he always had this collar?" Joseph asked. Rachel frowned slightly, thinking back. "Yeah, he has." Joseph's curiosity deepened. "Do you remember anyone who might have owned him before?" Rachel shook her head. "No, we never knew where he came from before my dad found him." They continued turning pages until one particular photo caught Joseph's attention. It was older, and unlike Milo's current tag, which was now scratched and worn, the name on this one was still perfectly legible. Joseph's heart raced. This was a clue. "Can I borrow this?" "It might help me figure something out," he asked. Rachel hesitated for a moment, then nodded, trusting Joseph with the photo. Back at the clinic, Joseph spread the picture on the counter in front of Amanda and Lily. "Look at this, Emily Harrington," he pointed out. A quick online search revealed a woman by that name living in a nearby town. The timeline fit perfectly. Joseph's pulse quickened as he dialed her number. "I might have found your lost cat," he explained carefully, his voice steady but tinged with hesitation, as if he wasn't entirely sure how she would react. Emily blinked, her mind struggling to process the words. Her heart pounded in her chest, and for a long moment, she simply listened, searching his voice for any sign that this was a misunderstanding or some kind of cruel joke. But his tone remained sincere. You think you found Milo?" she finally whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Joseph nodded. "I believe so. Would you be willing to come to the clinic and see for yourself?" Still dazed, Emily managed a small nod. She couldn't find the right words, but she knew there was only one answer. Yes, of course." The drive to the clinic felt surreal. Her mind flashed back to the day she had lost him, the countless flyers she had put up, and the pain that had never truly faded. She had tried to move forward, tried to accept that he was gone, but now there was hope. When she arrived, Joseph led her down the quiet hallway toward the kennels, his footsteps measured and deliberate. The scent of antiseptic and faint traces of animal fur filled the air, grounding her in the moment. Her pulse quickened as they stopped in front of a small enclosure. Joseph gestured gently. "He's in there." Inside the kennel, a gray tabby sat curled in a tight ball, his green eyes wary and untrusting. At first, Milo yowled, a sharp, defensive cry, the kind she had heard so many times before when he felt cornered or uncertain. Emily's breath caught in her throat. That sound, it was so familiar. Joseph stepped aside, allowing her to move closer. Milo froze mid-yowl, his ears twitched forward, his pupils dilating as he took in her face. Emily hesitated. She felt a lump forming in her throat, a mix of anticipation and fear. What if he didn't recognize her? What if too much time had passed? Slowly, cautiously, she extended her hand, palm open, giving him the chance to come to her on his own terms. Milo sniffed, his whiskers twitching. A long, silent moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken emotion. Then suddenly something shifted. His tail flicked, his posture changed, and a deep purr rumbled from his chest. Emily barely had a moment to react before Milo leaned in, pressing his forehead against her palm and rubbing against her with clear affection. A sharp gasp escaped her lips as tears welled in her eyes. "I lost him 6 years ago during a move," she choked out. "I searched everywhere, but he was just gone." Joseph watched quietly as she ran her fingers through Milo's fur, her touch light but reverent, as though she were afraid this moment might vanish like a dream. The depth of their bond was undeniable. But just as the room settled into the warmth of reunion, the sound of footsteps broke the moment. Lily, the clinic's assistant, appeared in the doorway, her expression tense. "Joseph," she murmured hesitantly. "Clara Simmons is here." Joseph turned to face her. "Clara?" His brows furrowed. Lily nodded, glancing between him and Emily. "She looks upset." Joseph exhaled sharply and exchanged a glance with Emily before giving her a reassuring nod. "I'll be right back." He stepped into the lobby where Clara Simmons stood near the front desk, her hands clasped tightly. Her face, lined with age, carried an expression of grief and uncertainty. For a moment there was silence. "I heard you found a cat," Clara finally said, her voice steady but fragile. Joseph nodded. "Yes, we did." Clara swallowed hard. Is it Milo?" Emily had followed quietly, standing just behind Joseph. As she stepped forward, her gaze met Clara's, and something unspoken passed between them. The conversation that followed was difficult at first, both women holding on to their own pain, their own truths. Emily spoke of the heartbreak of losing Milo, of the months and years spent searching for him, never fully able to accept that he was gone. Clara listened, her fingers tightening around the strap of her purse. Then, in a quiet voice, she shared her side of the story, how she and her late husband had found Milo wandering, how they had nursed him back to health, and how over time he had become part of their family. As they talked, the tension between them slowly eased. There was no blame, no anger, only love for the same cat. Their stories wove together in a way neither had expected, forming a bridge of understanding. After a long pause, Clara exhaled softly. "I suppose he's always had two families, hasn't he?" Emily blinked at her. Then slowly, she nodded. "Yes, I think he has." And so, after much thought, they came to a decision, one that neither had anticipated, but both felt was right. Milo would have two homes, two families, and all the love he had ever known. Joseph observed as they reached their agreement, a deep sense of fulfillment washing over him. Milo's journey had come full circle. Sometimes love wasn't about choosing. Sometimes it was about sharing. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss another inspiring and meaningful video. Our channel is dedicated to bringing you deep, thought-provoking stories and life lessons. Share this story with your friends and family to spread the love. Make sure to turn on notifications so you stay updated with our latest uploads. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.